Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Clear the Shelf podcast. As always, my benignant co-host, Chris Rasick, is here. And this week, we have a special Halloween-themed episode for you guys. We promise there are not going to be too many jump scares, but maybe a spooky moment or two during this episode. This week, we're going to be discussing fear and how it impacts your Amazon business. Chris came up with this idea, which I really liked, and it's kind of based on what we've both been able to see in Facebook groups and across different social media platforms, and we thought it would just really be appropriate to discuss this for Halloween week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode. Oh, and before we get started, please do us a huge solid. Make sure to smash the like button, leave a review or a comment wherever you might be listening to this or watching it, because it greatly helps us get the word out about the podcast, and we appreciate it. So, Chris, what's going on, man? How's your week been?
Week has been good. I'm certainly ready for Amazon to stop this house cleaning. I liked it better when I didn't hear from them so much. Seems like they've got multiple cleaning projects going on. But in honor of the Halloween episode, the Clear the Shelf Spooktacular, if you will, I did find out just this week. So you asked how my week went. I did find out what ghosts have in their nose. Of course, they have boogers. So that's I made a note in my head. I was like, that one's. We'll make sure Grant hears that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Amazon has been busy. Got a fresh batch of stranded inventory because they pulled the trigger on the GTIN cleaning project that they're working on.
My favorite thing about the GTIN project is how much guidance they've given us on what causes an issue and what doesn't cause an issue. That's been the best. And if you didn't hear the sarcasm there's been no guidance whatsoever. It just goes directly to stranded. Do not pass go. There is no information. It's a little frustrating.
I had to open a case just to find out what policy. It was just some vague, policy violation. So it didn't register that it might be GTIN, but yeah, I actually had to open a case just to get some information.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I would imagine this will probably stop, like, I'm guessing November-ish. They'll want to have everything in order, for the real holiday purchasing of like Black Friday and Cyber Monday and then of course the last minute Christmas rush. So hopefully that's the case. The other thing, speaking of spooky things, have you been a victim of IND4 and any of the items that just go into that black hole, that abyss?
No, I've been lucky to avoid that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, most of my stuff ships to prep centers on the West Coast, so I've been able to avoid most of that as well. If I do ship anything here from Florida, it typically goes to Charlotte. So I've been pretty lucky there, but I know I've been seeing it all over the place that people are just, I think some guy lost like 138 shoes and, it's been absolutely nuts.
Yeah. And then there's no easy way to recover it, right? All the stories that I'm hearing are, they want receipts for every, itemized list and proof of purchase and everything. And then once you get all that together, they're not even accepting that. I even hear nightmare stories of trying to resolve it.
we want the receipts from your suppliers. Where did your suppliers buy their supply?
Right.
Which is insane, and that's nowhere in the terms of service or anything like that. So I'd love to know where the seller support people are even getting that kind of idea that they need to try to get that information. It's crazy.
It feels like there's some independent thinkers in Amazon's customer service department.
It certainly seems that way. Yeah. I would appreciate a little bit more groupthink from those folks. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, let's jump into the topic for tonight. See if we can scare the pants off a few sellers in a few other ways.
Yeah. So I talked to you about the idea of it, and there are a lot of things. If you let it get away from you, there are a lot of things to be scared of in this business, and so we want to try to root some of these issues in reality, and make sure. Most important thing is making sure that your decisions aren't based on fear, that may not be grounded in reality, essentially, if that makes sense. So a whole bunch of things that can be scary about this business, depending on who you talk to and what tribe you're involved in. But let's start with basically being an Amazon seller. And I'll explain. When I first started, I remember, based on the context of everything that I was reading, and because my natural tendency is to take in as much information as possible. I want to learn as much about something before I jump in. And so through the context of reading and Facebook groups and different things that I joined to soak up as much content, in the beginning, when I was a new seller, it felt like your seller account could be suspended at any given time, and for no particular reason that's known to you. The way they presented it was it could happen to anybody, and you might not even see it coming. So there was that overwhelming, that looming fear that this might be all shut down. And then as I sold for a while, and as I became a little more experienced, I noticed it, not right away. I kind of looked back on it and realized that I didn't think about that as much. So I guess my question to you is, why do you think that fear would be so prevalent in the beginning? And what would you say to a newer seller that came to you with an irrational fear like that?
That's a good question. And you're right. It does seem that quite often you'll hear people talk about getting suspended or whatever, and it could happen because Jeff Bezos has a bad hair day. And
now that's funny.
I think part of it is the car accident effect. People are drawn to car wrecks. You drive by it, you're not supposed to slow down, you're not supposed to rubberneck, but immediately that's exactly what everyone does. And the same goes for a Facebook group about something like Amazon businesses. Somebody says, I was suspended. Here is my take on what I was suspended for, because I find that it's often a version of the truth, and I don't think anyone ever means to hold anything back or anything like that. But whenever someone gets suspended, it's very emotional. I've been slighted. It's not necessarily that I've broken a term or I've done something inappropriate. This was no good reason. Amazon is stupid. Jeff sucks, and that's why I was suspended. So what I like to tell people is that it may feel that way, but number one, you've got to take emotion out of it 100%. This is business. There is There's no room for emotion. You got to be logical about it. Two, there's typically a reason, even if you feel like there wasn't a reason. And I'll use my suspension last year as an example. And in this, my suspension was for an associated account to another Amazon seller who their account had been suspended. Now I don't live with this person. I am friends with this person. Okay. I'm good friends with this person, but I don't live with this person. I don't live in the same state as this person. We've never logged into each other's accounts. When I have been at their house, I never used their Wi-Fi on purpose. But what I did do is I sent their child a gift from my seller or my buyer account, and then their address got pulled into my seller account automatically. And then I was suspended for breaking Amazon's terms of service. So I understand why it happened. I don't necessarily think that was fair, but I get it. Amazon's trying to make sure that people are not, sidestepping the rules of not being able to open up another account after your account's been suspended. And I got caught up because enough people try to break those rules that sometimes someone doing things by the book will get caught up in it. We saw this just last week or the week before with the Nike temporary restraining orders. Legitimate Amazon sellers got caught up in those, while Nike and Amazon are trying to clean up the platform of counterfeit Nike products. It happens. And so you've just got to deal with it head on and, give Amazon what they want, what they need. Yeah, it absolutely sucks, but as long as you're really trying to follow the rules, there's typically a path back to getting your account reinstated. And that's what you really need to know. And it's not just the Amazon business, bad things happen in any business. And I'll use an example from my insurance days. I sold insurance for like 12 years. You've got to carry errors and omissions insurance in case you make a mistake, things like that. Well, I was actually like fined from the Department of Insurance one time because of what I considered negligence on one of my clients' parts. Their policy canceled. They said they didn't know, but because I was the professional, I was the one who was held responsible, even though they got cancellation notices and things like that. It's just kind of the way it is. When you're in business, you are the one who is responsible for everything, even sometimes when it's not necessarily your fault, and you just got to handle it.
Yeah, well, that's from my previous career. So it basically, and not to be a corporate apologist, or an Amazon apologist, but it's like, think about how you solve something on a wide range basis. Like you have to put the policy. Would you rather have the policy be over aggressive and fold innocent people in on the edges by accident in an effort to correct the root of the problem that you're going after? Or would you rather be too narrow and let offenders get by because, you're not being comprehensive enough in your policy?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't have it both ways. And, so there's almost collateral damage is virtually inevitable. I ran into the same thing when I worked at the bank. I was in compliance, and I got that job shortly after the foreclosure crisis, from the mid-aughts. And basically what the government did in a reactive, reaction, they put all this stuff into place, and it was a bunch of people who didn't do the job making the rules, which is always fun. And then it was written for the big banks, and they looked at what the big banks did and the inefficiencies and all the stuff that caused all these issues. And so they made 900 pages, and then a couple years later, 900 more pages. So 1,800 pages of legislation to solve this problem. And there we were, a community bank trying to put this stuff into place that was written in the eyes of, one department's, and, like take Chase. I'm not picking on them in particular, but like Chase Bank, you'll have people in different parts of the country who work for the same department, but then you have community banks who it's like 3 or 4 people, and
Right.
And they have to install 1,800 pages worth of new rules, that are coming after the fact, after the damage has been done, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not sure there's an easy solution, and I mean it's tough one way or the other.
Yeah, it is. And if we I do think that we as sellers do need to think about it from Amazon's side. And the reason I say this, and I know that we're both, going to sound like Amazon apologists here, but Amazon has created a platform that it's pretty trusted. I know that, the older it gets, the more cynical people get, and, things like that. But it really is one of the most trusted platforms on the internet. And because of that, it gives us and, hundreds of thousands of other people the ability to make, honestly, there really is no ceiling to how much you can make, but, plenty of people can replace jobs and things like that with it. And because of that, because they've got to put the customer first and make sure that, customers are satisfied, make sure customers are protected, etc., there are going to be some times when legitimate good sellers do get caught up in something that's not necessarily their fault. But I don't think that's the rule. I think that, it's the exception, but there are so many of us that sometimes it can feel like the rule. And the people who do get suspended are often very vocal, very loud. I want to make, we saw a lady or a person a couple weeks ago went and posted in like 4 different groups because, they had just gotten reinstated or something. And I don't think the whole truth ever really came out from what the suspension was about, but it certainly was not a sky is falling moment as it was made out to be.
Right.
So.
Yeah. There's 3 sides to every story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's enough to qualify for our shill payments. Is Andy Jassy? Is that direct deposit or does Jassy cut a check?
I'm getting PayPal payments, so
okay.
we'll have to work on yours though.
Curious choice of platform. All right, so more fears, more Halloween scary fears. Well, this one is fitting for you as a creator, owner of IP Alert. The fear of IP complaints.
Yeah. I mean, this one is legit, and IP complaints are a little bit more of a boogeyman, I think, because you never know what corner this IP complaint boogeyman might be poking around. And so this is something I explain to people because I do get messages and emails on a fairly regular basis. Well, how come this brand isn't in IP Alert? And how come, why is this brand in here? And was it a cease and desist or was it an IP complaint? Or, you better give me more information. And, they're mad at me for just trying to protect folks. So for anybody who has IP Alert, it is a data point. It should not be kind of the end all be all about whether or not you sell a product. You need to, take a look at your own risk tolerance. And here's what I can tell you. One, we do try to take brands off of there. And recently, we've taken off a couple, one of them being It Cosmetics, for example. After talking to a bunch of people and even myself going out and selling a few $1,000s worth of that brand's products and not getting any IP complaints or anything, I said, okay, we can go ahead and pull this down. Well, sure enough, as soon as I pull off that brand, they start back at it, and I get a couple of letters from people that, you know, they're filing these IP complaints, and a couple people got some nasty grams and things like that. I have not added them back yet because I don't have quite enough evidence yet that they're actually going to go after sellers more than with scary letters. So it's a very, very difficult thing to police, and there are always brands starting and stopping. You know, we know that Starbucks went crazy on people for a short time. Walgreens did the same thing, and then they seemed to pull back. So the only thing you can do with IP complaints is, number one, don't be overly scared of them. It's going to happen to you eventually. Two, make sure that you've got all of your receipts and your invoices and everything in order. Make sure you keep good records about where you got the item so that you can show that it was a legitimate item. It's not counterfeit, because that's what most IP complaints are going to be. They're going to be counterfeit IP complaints. Most people are not going to file a trademark IP complaint. And then the third thing you can do, if it will help you sleep at night, is you can, have somebody on retainer who can help you with it. You know, whether it's a service like Riverbend, or if it's an attorney like Jeff Schick, or something like that. There are people out there who are professionals who can handle these kinds of things if you don't want to deal with them on your own. But you can deal with most of them with an email or two, and just say, it was sent, was sent wrong, and show that it's accurate, show that the item is authentic, and you're usually pretty good. But I mean, I think that's all you can do with IP complaints.
Yeah, that's and some I just read. I talked to somebody today, or read comments today of essentially they just pinky swore not to sell it again, and it was retracted. So. Yeah, that's if you just accept the fact that it's going to happen, but then realize that there's multiple layers of protection that you can put on, even when you're sourcing, and then even after the fact, like you mentioned, with services that can help guide you through it.
Yeah.
So.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick second and thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold, as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages, so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
All right. All right. So the next one we want to talk about is the fear of customer complaints.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, fold this into feedback. I think that was part of the reason that I have never done any merchant fulfilling. My thought process in the beginning was, if it's all fulfilled by Amazon, like let's work at 100% feedback, while I'm just getting started. And I've never rescinded that that thought process, but and I talk to people. It seems like the prevailing thought is, if you're going to do your fair share of merchant fulfillment, that you're going to get some negative feedback, and just if you decide to become an MFer, 100% is not feasible anymore. Is that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the only reason, and this goes back years, but I've known a couple of really big booksellers, and I think once booksellers get to a certain size, they no longer can use FBA, completely. They've got to do merchant fulfilling. Back in the day, part of the reason you did merchant fulfilling is because essentially you'd break even on the book and you'd make money on the shipping. There were a lot of business models like that, but I would come across those folks and I'd be like, how are you still selling when you've got like a 78% feedback score? And a lot of it was because, something was late or, whatever. And you just didn't have that Amazon protection like you do if you use FBA. And the only customer complaint that I really fear is if they decide to say that something was fake in their bad feedback, because that can often trigger an inauthentic review of your items, and then you've got to deal with sending in receipts and showing the items are authentic and showing your chain of custody and things like that, and that becomes a little bit more of an issue. But other than that, if somebody's upset because the item didn't fit, or they're mad because the UPS man dropped it in a bush instead of on their porch, those are all pretty easy to get taken care of with Amazon and get them struck through or maybe even removed. So I don't. And the other thing is that I think too many people think that they absolutely must have a 100% feedback score or they're never going to get the buy box again.
That's not what. That's not the case. What?
Yeah. And I don't know why this myth, is still around or keeps going, or, or how much of a weight your feedback score is on your buy box percentage, but there are drop shippers out there getting buy boxes and they've got like 65% feedback score. So that myth is now officially busted. You don't have to have a perfect feedback score. We want to do a good job. We want to keep our nose clean and things like that. But with enough volume, someone's going to be upset. Whether, some Karen is just out for blood one day, or some Chad is mad because, his monster got dented when it was shipped to him. Like, you just can't control the customers 100%, and these things are going to happen, but it's definitely not the end of the world.
Reading through as many reviews as I just naturally do in this business, it's amazing how mad people get over dented packaging. That's I mean, over in, like, I know I'm talking about stuff that, like, dog food, does that somehow, modify the product itself? I mean, is Fido, not going to get the nutrients now? Like, like, so mad that they put fingers to keyboard and have to share.
I know
their distress.
It makes no sense to me, some of these things. And it's been, so my dad has been a UPS hourly employee for like my entire life. 36 years, 37 years, my dad's been an hourly employee. And so I've known from a very young age how packages get treated. And I would imagine that with how much packages are shipped and how many people buy online, that they've got to know how packages get treated. And with the rise of Ring doorbells, like, that, FedEx throws it from 30 feet away and then, gives it the people's elbow before they go back to the truck. But if the item is still in good condition, like, why go and give some seller a hard time when they were not the ones who dropped it off at your home and kicked it through the front door?
Right. I've been working on. I haven't actually made it yet, but I do meme of the week for my newsletter, and I've got this meme brewing in my head. And have you seen the Skeletor ones? where he gives uncomfortable facts and then he runs away in the second panel, right?
Yes, those are my favorite.
A lot of those are really, really good. So I was thinking of making one for an upcoming newsletter, Amazon-based one, where it's something like, okay, if you really want to get technical, you didn't deserve 90% of the good feedback you received either. And then like have them run like, so, because technically that's, I mean, you can get almost anything removed, when it's FBA, but I mean, if you really look through your feedback, you probably didn't deserve most of those either.
I know that I had nothing to do with how good something tasted that I sold.
Right.
I didn't cook it. I didn't package it. I just put it in a box and sent it off to Amazon, and someone paid a ridiculous amount of money for some crunch berries.
Yep. Yeah. I had, I never even looked up what the product was, but it was way too big for her little doggy. And I got negative feedback, and it was removed instantly. But you're right. The flip side, if it fit her doggy perfectly, that's really, I can't take credit for that either. Technically.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. So I'll have to polish off that meme and make sure it hits as hard as I know it can. It's got potential.
That's a good one.
So, all right. So this next one, I'm kind of coupling this into, basically your selling account itself, and fears based on that. So, but this last one's going to segue into getting more specific into the fears involved when you're sourcing. And this one I've heard from newer sellers and older sellers alike. It doesn't seem to matter how much you're seasoned, but the fear of refunds. Now, and I heard you say it today. You responded to somebody, or no, it was in one of your memes that you posted, and you reassured us that the returns on Halloween costumes really aren't that bad. However, I am still reeling from the Halloween costume that I got returned on January 29th of last year. I've seethed now for about 10 months straight. So set me straight, please.
All right. So fear of refunds. This one, I mean, I get this one. You sell something, you've realized your profit, and then all of a sudden someone decides that they are sick and tired of this Halloween costume that their kid puked all their candy into, shouldn't be sitting around their closet anymore, and it should get returned to you rather than, just be thrown in the trash. Now, Halloween costumes and inflatables, things like that, the return rate is a bit higher. Someone who is a really seasoned seller said that some brands he knows get like 30% returns. He specifically called out like adult female costumes get returned a lot more than a lot of other costumes. I don't know. I don't know the breakdown, but they happen. That is part of being a retailer, and I don't think that we should. Really don't know if we should call ourselves resellers, or maybe we'd have a different image of ourselves if we all talked about ourselves as retailers rather than resellers. We're doing the same thing Target does. We're buying from distributors, even if ours look different than Target's do. But refunds they're part of the game, and it's one of the things that Amazon does to bring customers back to the platform, which brings us sales. And so you've got to have them kind of baked into your margins. And I think that's the most important thing, is rather than being upset about them, understand on the front end that they're going to happen. People are allowed to return things, and bake those kind of things into your margins. And then the other thing that we should understand is that not every refund is equal. Some refunds, like that Halloween costume, you had to eat that. I mean, there's nothing you could do about it. I'm sure it probably wasn't in sellable condition again, and if it was, you probably weren't going to hold it for a year until you could sell it again. But a ton of stuff that you get. I just had a makeup item returned to me. And Amazon said it was not in sellable condition anymore. And I get it back. I sign for the package for this one makeup item, open it up, and sure enough, it's completely fine. Everything's perfect. It's going to be back on a truck to Amazon, in a little while. And so while I will be out some of the fees for that particular item, and my margins aren't going to be as good as they once were, I'm still going to profit a little bit on that item. And you're going to be able to do that, I would say, on 60 to 70% of your returns. The other thing you should do is just have a plan in place. Like, okay, if I get a pair of Nike shoes returned to me and, they're completely different than what I sent into Amazon, well, there's a process for getting those switcheroos reimbursed. Okay. If they sent you back a shoe that, maybe they wore for a week and so you really can't sell them as new, well, guess what? There's a market for used shoes. In some cases, you might be able to sell them for more than if they were new, if you know the right sites. So have a plan for your items that get refunded. And as long as you're coming out ahead on 80% of everything, you're probably going to be okay as long as you've baked that into your margins.
Yeah, I think I don't think we think about averages enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's it's a similar concept to when we talked about when I know we talked about it when we had Dylan on. But basically your strategy of when you lower the price. I know we've talked about it. You have a more aggressive strategy than I do about when you'll move it or when you're willing to move it to a 0% ROI just to move it. So it's a similar concept. You're working on the average, and this actually came up in my last mastermind meeting, because we were talking about because there's some unique situations, especially this time of year, because you've got, we're in Q4, we walk through the door of Q4. So the question is, it can make you think twice about certain items. You may be willing to hold for longer, hoping that sales velocity, gets moving here in a little bit. It's certainly a possibility. So you think a little bit longer about some items, this time of year. Mm-hmm. But there's situations, and when we were talking about it, I think it's too easy for some people to focus on just the one channel or the maybe just the remaining units that you have. Because basically the situation, this might help explain it a little bit, but there was a listing that one of the people in my mastermind had, and they basically had it all to themselves. They had the buy box. They sold several units at their ideal profit. Mm-hmm. And then it was a test buy. So they went, ooh, this is great. I'm going to go buy more. So they bought more, sent them in. But by the time the second wave made it in, somebody else had jumped on the listing and marked it for significantly lower. Right. So now the question is, okay, do I try to wait this seller out, which has its own perils, because what if that seller also replens? Mm-hmm. So there's a couple layers to that decision. But then, but I think the mistake that some people make is, you get so hung up, you're like, oh, I've got, let's just say you have 5 units left, from sending the second wave in. You've sold, you made nice profit, but then these 5, you have to decide when or if do I lower the price, and it's easy to just calculate those numbers on those 5 remaining units without realizing that you made full boat on it on several units beforehand. So, you have to incorporate that number, to get a true outlook on your profitability on that ASIN in particular. If you want the realistic number, I think it's too easy to forget about the profit that happened earlier.
Yeah. I think that's an incredible point, because for example, I know that, and especially for newer sellers, it's, oh, okay, I'm going to start this Amazon business, and you know what? I'm going to be a seven-figure seller in no time. Okay, but well, first of all, slow down. Enjoy the process of getting there, and make sure that your fundamentals are right. But if we do want to have a big business, I think we have to change our mindsets from being so focused on every little piece of minutia, and looking at how much profit every single, like, okay, sale number one, I made $2.15, and sale number two, oh man, I was down to $1.97. I think about like Buy Boxer. They do like $58 million a year in sales. Well, they've shared like what their profits are on, they'll take like 30 different ASINs that they're selling or SKUs, and they'll say, okay, well, for this SKU, we've sold, 8,000 units over the past year, and our average profit was 75 cents per unit. And I mean, that's how they think about their entire business. And when they want to cut a line or bring a line on, they'll say, okay, well, what are kind of the minimums and maximums we think we're going to get from this? And then if we think we can sell, 5,000 units over this next 6 months, this is probably about what we'll average in profit. So, okay, does it fit our criteria now? Whereas us doing OA or RA, we might say, oh, well, what is this? Am I going to make $7 every single time I sell this? And that kind of will guide our decision, rather than, could I make between $2 and $3, and could I sell this, 50 or 100 times over the next 2 or 3 months? And then I think that changes. I mean, that changes how you source if you start thinking about it in that direction, rather than, trying to focus, so closely.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get stuck in one channel, or looking at one chart or one page of your bookkeeping. It's when the refunds go, make sure, if you scratch out a little bit of money on eBay from the returns, make sure you fold that into your overall view of the profitability. So it's easy to skip that one. So, all right. So, and you mentioned changing your sourcing, based on that information. So I want to get into, this is, boy, man, we can grind over so many little decisions and so many fears of what might happen. There's probably no more influential fear in this business than when you're sourcing scared, and you're trying to make a decision on whether you're going to pull the trigger and how many units. There's a lot to consider. The first one, I think the obvious one, would be the fear of the price tanking, the tank-a-lantern, if you will, to stick with the theme. How do you? There's so many what ifs, and we'll key on price tanking, but how do you keep all the what if horrible scenarios that might happen? How do you keep those at bay when you're making a decision on purchasing inventory?
That's a good question. And yeah, I've got to quote the wise philosopher and hip hop artist Moneybagg Yo. Scared money don't make money. So I think that's kind of a mindset shift that people have to have, especially if you're coming from, I've been an employee all my life, but I really want to kind of have this side hustle, or maybe it's something that I really want to turn into a business long term. You cannot invest with scared money. You've got to realize that there is the chance of losing it, and you really should never invest more than you could afford to lose. But in a dynamic marketplace like Amazon, there are going to be times when prices tank. And one of the things that I always see is, well, if I buy it for this much, how are they selling it for this much? They're obviously losing money. Well, maybe they're taking the PharmaPax approach and they're willing to lose money on products. Or maybe they're selling gray market goods or liquidated items, and we can never assume what someone else's cost of goods sold are. All right. And so, a listing that looks perfect and has never had a price change for, 5 years can all of a sudden tank because maybe someone is buying it from a place that they really shouldn't be and they're just getting it super, super cheap. But two, we have so much data available to us that you can make pretty good sourcing decisions and kind of quell your fear of price tanking. You can look back over 90 days or 6 months and you can always say, okay, well, this is the lowest price that it has been over the past 90 days or 180 days. And at this price point, at this lowest price point, maybe I would break even or maybe I'd make, 50 cents or $1. But based on today's prices, I might make $5. And you can kind of hedge your bets there. Yeah. And the other thing that I think is important, and I know that a lot of people are like, no, let's go hard. Let's buy 100 units on everything we want to sell. And I see a lot of that on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. But I have always been a fan of an inch deep and a mile wide. I don't think that there's any reason, personally, when we're doing OA, when we're doing RA, to go deep on a product without first testing it a couple of times, and kind of making sure that prices are going to hold, and or maybe it shows up on some BOLO list somewhere, and now you've got 150 sellers. But I think really we've got to realize prices are going to fluctuate based on supply and demand. And once you realize that, you can make a lot better sourcing decisions.
Yeah, what I think is pretty telling. Assuming everyone listening and everyone here is in at least an okay place as an Amazon seller. Go into inventory labs, assuming most people have inventory labs or whatever your inventory management system is. Go into inventory labs and pull up ASIN profitability, and sort it by either ROI or net profit, and then click to the red part, and not that it'll make you unhappy if you are a happy seller, but but just take a look at some of the things that you bought that have done horribly, that lost money, for whatever reason, but then look at it, from the point of view of, hey, things are going pretty well, and we're moving right along, and there's no, I'm not on the verge of quitting this whole thing, but it's a little bit of perspective. If you look at, hey, I've had all these misses, all these bad buys, all these things that just didn't work out. But look at it knowing that it's going to happen. It always has happened, to a certain percentage. But again, I'll pull back the last point that I made is remember the averages, and even if you getting back to inventory labs, if you look at the first page, it'll show you the your profit numbers, and know that number is comprised from your good buys and those bad buys. It all, it's all gonna, your average is gonna be your average, and this is price tanking and buying something that does tank. It's just gonna be a part of it, and you can't, unless there's something in the charts, something in the data before you buy it, it really shouldn't be that much of an influence on your decision to purchase something.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, I don't know. So for me, like, I don't pay attention to a price fluctuating a little bit until it comes time for me to decide whether or not I need to liquidate an item. But every now and again, I'll go back through the items that I've sold and I'll just kind of look and see what the price has done. And it's fascinating how malleable prices are on Amazon. I think in one day I sold like 6 units of an item, and not one of them was for the same price. And the crazy thing is not all of them, So like in the beginning of the day, there was something sold for like 21.47, and then the next three were lower prices, and then the fourth one was at like $23. So the price had gone up, that quickly in a day. So if I average those out, I did all right. I think one of them was like 50-cent profit, but the other ones were $3-4 profit, and I probably averaged out to $250 a unit, and that's good. That's all I needed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's realizing that 250, that's where you were going to be, and you got to take the good and the bad with it.
Yeah.
I recently talked to a seller that talked themselves out of candy canes already, and just kind of grinded over the decision, and in the first week of October, just 86 the idea of candy cane. Like, nope, not going to do it. And it was this manufactured price tanking that assumed that this person assumed was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't know. I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. I mean, this person is a good seller and doing well, but I'm not sure you can make that decision that early. And it's kind of that's kind of the point. It's a whole bunch of what ifs, and it's a whole bunch of things that you've manufactured. I'm not sure I like the idea of making decisions based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a couple of things that like you didn't even mention, like, okay, well, if I were to buy those items now, and that's a good seasonal example. So we know that chances are the supply is going to run up, but demand is also going to run up. So maybe that holds some price parity for us. But then, of course, demand is going to trickle off, and the supply is also going to dwindle. And what happens then? Well, a lot of times the price ends up rebounding because I don't know. I'm not a person who buys candy canes all year round, but there are apparently a ton of people who do.
There are.
So.
Yeah, it's I mean, the point is that the landscape of the candy cane market on Amazon is impossible to know at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not even close to revealing itself. So, yeah. So don't give up on candy canes if you're out there listening. All right. So another one. You hear this in especially in private label sellers. Listings getting hijacked, and I've heard even FBA sellers too. You wake up and all of a sudden somebody overnight while you're sleeping changed it from a single unit to a 3-pack.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get over the fear of the lawlessness that is listing edits?
Yeah, this one's a tough one. There's nothing you can do, and then you try to go and fix it, and that's a headache in itself. If you can even get it fixed, and you show it to the catalog team, and they're like, well, we need proof that it was changed, and you're like, come on, you can't see the edit history, and on your end we've got to prove it to you, and so it's an incredibly frustrating cycle. I'll tell you what I do. I use a service so that I get alerts if a listing gets changed, because I don't want to wake up, especially on a fast moving product where maybe I've sold 20 or 30 of something, and then all of a sudden I know that every single one of those is going to get refunded. So worst case scenario, you're going to have to eat some refunds. That's just the way it is. Best case scenario, you can pick up on those changes pretty quickly, and maybe you can strand your inventory until the listing gets repaired, or you can pull your items and put them back on another listing or create a new listing, whatever you have to do. But again, this is one of those like, well, what if, things that I think we just use to keep ourselves from moving forward. There are so many what if it just happens. So my biggest thing is here, you're not going to be able to look at every single one of your listings every single day. I mean, unless you've got like 5, but if you've got 50 or 100, you just don't have time to go through every single one of those. So get yourself a piece of software that watches them for you. I think it might be $19 a month or something like that. It's fairly inexpensive, and it protects you in case something like this happens.
Yeah, that's that's a good point, and that's we've repeated that a few times. It's if you're so scared of it happening that it's going to alter the decisions that you make sure you've done your due diligence and find out if there's a solution in case it does. That may help you, sleep at night or make the decision that you're grinding over.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So, and then one final part on specifically on the sourcing side of it. And there's certainly no one size fits all answer to this. But a lot of people have not only different opinions, but the fear of actually spending the money on inventory, of potentially, shelling out the actual bucks, whether it be, trying to whether it be, opening up credit cards and carrying debt, which some people do and like to leverage. I am in that camp. And then, or there are other people who, are more like maybe a Dave Ramsey model, who believe in carrying no debt, paying everything in cash, which I don't think those people actually exist. There's no way that, a bunch of nerds. How do you do that? But there are people who don't believe, you pay everything off at the end, and personally, I think it's un-American. But how do you ease the fears of actually opening the wallet?
Yeah, this is a tough one, and I think especially for people who are kind of used to that employee mindset, and things like that. It's tough, but so I too am a fan of credit cards. I think that other people's money is one of the best ways to be able to make more money. I mean, we essentially get a 30-day, zero interest loan if we do pay our credit card off, to be able to sell products and make a 10 or 20 or 30% ROI. And really, if you think about it, if you are actually not paying any interest on credit cards and you're selling something at a 30% ROI, your ROI is actually infinite. It's not just that 30%, because you've really got no money out of your pocket. Now, you're on the hook for it, so if things go south, it's not like you can just wash your hands of it and walk away.
And this is dangerously close to public math also.
It is. I don't know how to tell people to kind of get over that fear, or how to properly walk them through the, if you want to start a business, there is going to be some level of risk. Doesn't matter if you're starting a business on Amazon or you're starting, some sort of service business in your local neighborhood. There is going to be a level of risk, period. So you've got to decide what level of risk are you comfortable with. And I would go back and say, listen, if someone says that they have zero risk tolerance, but they also have a job, well, you do have a risk tolerance, because you risk that you're going to get fired or downsized, every single day. And then you have no backup. There's no side hustle. There's, no exit strategy or anything like that. So our risks are really just different. Mine is that I've got some money on a credit card. Now I've gotten to the point where 95% of the time have enough cash to cover as much as I'm going to spend on inventory, but that wasn't always the case. And I was a little bit more fast and loose with the credit card payments than I am nowadays. But I think the biggest thing is decide how much you're willing to put at stake, and just start there. And it's okay if that's $100 or $500, or maybe it's $10,000, whatever your risk tolerance is. But start somewhere and verify that the method works and that you can figure it out, and you know what's going on, and you're going to at least break even. And then once you've done that, you can go a little bit bigger and start to scale and things like that.
Yeah, like you like to say is, this business allows you to make a series of small bets, and that goes hand in hand with going an inch deep and a mile wide. It's I think the main thing that you need to keep in mind is, try to maintain perspective. It is, the decision that you're going to make, or the amount of inventory that you're going to buy, make sure you ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Because if you're doing test buys and you're being smart about it, how much are you going to lose total? And is that amount devastating, at your current situation? Hopefully not. Don't, I'd try to, advise you not to make decisions that if they fail would be devastating. But then this whole process, thinking about all the topics that we've covered so far, I think you also have to ask yourself that what's the worst that has happened? Like not harping on, I'm not picking on the candy cane seller, but how much have you lost selling candy canes in previous years? This isn't this person's first Q4, but like how much of a bath have you taken on those sweet little sickles? Not much, I'm guessing. I think that's the perspective, that can help guide a lot of these decisions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important. If you can't live with your answer to what's the worst that can happen, then it's probably not the right thing for you. And yeah, I don't know. What I find happens, which kind of I think sums up kind of all of these things, is what I find is people is they want some certainty before they buy something, before they start selling on Amazon, or start any business for that matter. And I know we've talked about this before, but it doesn't matter what business you're in, there is always going to be a level of uncertainty. When you're the chief cook and bottle washer, it's just the way it is, unfortunately. And when we're working a regular job or we're working a 9 to 5, we may not feel that uncertainty, but it's still there. It's just manifested in other ways. Like getting downsized, getting let go, or whatever it might be. So the risks just look a little bit different. So I don't know. I think that's kind of what helped me get over get over the whole fear of having my own thing. Is that I finally was shown while I was working a 9 to 5 that I didn't actually have control of the future. Someone else did, and that was just as bad as there being some uncertainty of me owning my own business. So I went owning my own business as the preferred route.
Yeah. And I think, this, as prevalent as side hustles have become, and making money online, or however you want to, kind of summarize it and categorize it, it's, I think, not to get borderline woo woo about this, but even if you're working a 9 to 5, you're investing something, whether it be your time away from your family, away from your home, or but if you really boil it down, you are investing something. just like you are in this business. It's whether it be time and a commute with a 9 to 5, or whether it be, your hard-earned dollars that you're putting at risk, buying some inventory in this business. But you kind of get to, there's a whole lot of positives that go along with it. So I think it's important to not let these fears kind of steamroll, and kind of snowball. And there's one last fear on my list that I want your take on. And I don't know if I was reading it or listening to a seller, but basically this person mentioned something about, and they rattled off a list of tools, and I know Inventory Labs was one, and a repricer was another, but then they made a comment and they said something like, I'm just so overwhelmed because I have to do all this manual stuff. And it it struck me as a contradiction, because the list of tools that this person listed right before that statement were all things that are designed to help kind of automate the process and make things not as manual, so you can free up your time to do other things. But then the statement that this person made was completely the opposite. So there may be issues of not getting the most out of the the tools that this person's invested in. But also, I think the bigger issue, the more common issue, is there's a fear of delegation. And I've heard sellers too that hire a VA, but then keep the leash so tight, essentially they don't let their VA do anything close to what they hired that person to do. So in general, we'll call it the fear of delegation. Like, how do you get over that? Especially because, this one's probably becomes more prevalent the more seasoned you are as a seller, because you're gonna need more things delegated the bigger you are. So, how do you, it seems to me that'd be pretty important to manage that fear.
Yeah, this one kind of hits close to home, because I still have this issue, and I think it. Well, I don't think, I know that it probably it's probably a serious weight around the neck of the growth in our business. I think the biggest thing is you have to realize that it's impossible to clone yourself. And let's just, for the sake of this argument, let's just say that you're a perfect business owner. You're smart, you know how to do the books perfectly, you know how to, source perfectly, you know how to manage inventory perfectly. Unfortunately, it's impossible to create another one of you. So you've just got to realize that if someone can do 80% of what you can do, that's good enough. All right. And, done is better than perfect, because if you're not going to get it done, then having it done by someone else, even if it's not perfect, is going to be better. And this goes for everything. If a repricer can handle your repricing fairly good, but it can do it a ton faster and also save you an hour or an hour and a half per day, well, what are you getting back from that? It's a ton of time, it's a ton of worry, it's a ton of thought, and you can all kind of program that into a software. If you have a VA source for you, and okay, so if I source for, 2 hours, I would say that I could probably find 8 to 12 pretty good leads. Well, maybe it takes a VA 8 hours to get 8 to 12 pretty good leads. Maybe your hit rate on those is only 60%. Well, if you think about it that way, then you're like, oh, well, I could have done that myself in 2 or 3 hours. It doesn't sound good. But the thing is you've now done this with 0 of your time. So it's actually a heck of a lot better, because you were working on other things, or maybe you were, opening up wholesale accounts, or maybe you were fixing your repricer so it works, 10% better. Uh, so one, I think you need to realize that you're never going to be able to clone yourself. But two, also think about what you're going to gain in time, and where will that propel you when you've got the time to think, when you've got the time to work on, these outstanding projects you want to get done. And so what is that upside that you're missing by not delegating?
Yeah, I find since I started doing this and I became self-employed, um, not only did I learn that I'm a terrible employee, but I'm also not a very good boss either. Uh, so luckily, a company of one. But this reminds me of the point that Jeff Hayden made in the Motivation Myth, which if you haven't read that book, it's fantastic. We mention Atomic Habits all the time, but it's a much closer second than the mentions would indicate for me, as
Mm-hmm.
far as favorite books. But he makes that great point about the editor of, I believe it was the New Yorker, and he said that this editor was probably the greatest writer, most talented writer that he had ever met, and but yet it was his job to approve pieces for the magazine,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you really think about it, this guy's job was to look at, edit, suggest revisions and whatnot, but he was basically managing a bunch of people that couldn't do the job as well as he could. But in the end, he gave whatever constructive criticism, but in the end, he rubber stamped it and approved it to actually be published and distributed across the country. So essentially, he had to knowingly release into the public inferior work
Mm-hmm.
based on, if we're looking at it from based on what he could do. So and I remember that hit so hard with me, and it really put my own micromanaging tendencies in check, and it's like,
Yes.
yeah, boy, that's a really good point. You have to realize, that you're right. You can't clone yourself, and even if you're the greatest trainer in the world, you may struggle to even get somebody close to 100% of what you can do, if it's even possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it is possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
That story you brought up also hits close to home. Writing blog posts is one of the things that I've actually done okay with at outsourcing and delegating to someone. And they're a great writer, but I know infinitely more than they do about Amazon. They do know Amazon, but I've forgotten more than they know about selling on Amazon. And I'm not knocking them or anything like that. A really good person, really like them. But here's the thing. I'm now getting blog posts up on the site on a regular basis. Whereas before, even though I've got all the stuff in my head, I was not getting it onto paper. And so, I'll go in and I'll edit it and I'll make some revisions here and there and, maybe fix a mistake or two. But now I've actually got the content going up. And, you know, even though it may not be as good as I could do, well, all of the things that come from having that content, we're seeing go in the right direction. We're seeing page views go up. We're seeing emails go up. So everything is moving up and to the right, which is the important part. And those things wouldn't be happening if I wasn't willing to delegate.
exactly. Like what's the one quote? 2 hours of doing something is doing something poorly is better than 2 weeks of thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to just dismiss done is better than perfect as just some simple little cliche quote, but it's
Mm-hmm.
so true.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, Alex Hormozy, who you may not, I know you know who he is, but you guys listening may not know who he is, but he talks about uh, he summarizes done is better than perfect by taking swings. And he's like, if he's like, you can take 100 swings and maybe only one of them connects, but it's more likely that you're going to knock that one out of the park because, you've done so many of the other swings. And he says it much more eloquently than I ever will. But yeah, another good follow on Twitter if you happen to be over there.
Yeah. So that's the list of frights that I came up with. So
yeah,
if the listeners have anything else, shoot them in the comments. We can talk more. This was fun.
Yeah. I think this is a good one. I guess a couple of things I would mention before we end the show is one, there are a lot of places that you can go that will absolutely freak you out about selling on Amazon if this is an avenue that you either want to explore. One of those is going to be Reddit. The other one is going to be the seller forums. I would highly suggest you try not to spend a ton of time in those places.
Terrifying places.
It really are. Find some good Facebook groups, find some people that you like on Instagram or Twitter, and reach out and talk to people, and kind of, get everyone's truth, rather than just the fear mongering that goes on over on Reddit and the seller forums. Or, like there are some suspension groups on Amazon that will just keep you up at night if you read too many of the posts. So, but yeah. Chris, what's the quote of the week this week?
We found a fitting one. It's one of our favorites, Naval Ravikant. He says, "Uncertainty, not outcome, is the root of stress." And boy, is that 100% true, right?
Yeah, it really is. It's unfortunate because so much in life and business, is uncertain, and it's now our job as entrepreneurs to be able to handle that, and kind of have, what did Marcus Aurelius call them? I believe he called them ivory shoulders, to be able to deal with that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a great quote. All right, that's it for us this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris, and we'll be back next week again. If you guys have any ideas or topics that you'd love to have covered, our inboxes are always open. Our social media is down below. You can reach out to either one of us. If this was helpful, please share it. Take a screenshot and share it in a Facebook group or on your social media. Tag us. We'd love to see it. And thank you for being willing to share this. And hopefully this was helpful for you guys. So until next week, thanks for hanging out, Chris. And thank you guys for listening. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share it to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.